Good morning on a Thursday, the 16th of July, 2020. Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington. This week I started looking at the beginning, going way back and looking at some of these wonderful stories that we find in the book of Genesis. A couple of days ago then looked at this concept of why we are not meant to be alone, how Ish and Isha became in Hebrew what they call the Ezer Kenegdo for each other, the one who is just right, the one who fits me, who completes me. Not everybody has an Ezer Kenegdo. Some have had them and they have lost them and grieve for the loss of that. Some still enjoy it. For us, we've had 40 good years of marriage and no years of bad marriage. It's all been good, 40 years. Today, though, let's move on. We've got this couple, we've got Ish and Isha, and they are in the garden. And in chapter 3 of the book of Genesis, we find that God has said to them, "You may not eat of any of the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." That's verse 3 of chapter 3, Genesis. Why would God put a tree in the garden and then forbid them to touch it? Here's the rest of the garden. You can eat anything here. It's full of plants and animals, or our Seventh-day Adventist sisters and brothers would say it's full of plants for us to eat, that the animals are themselves vegetarian, and we were meant to be vegetarian, that we were not meant to eat the animals. And yet throughout the Bible we see that we have descended from people who were nonetheless meat eaters. Is that a product of sin, which we'll look at in a minute, or is that how it was from the beginning? Because it does say in Genesis chapter 1, God gave them every plant yielding seed and fruit to eat. It does not say God gave them animals to eat. So that's one of the questions that has plagued us, is the fact that we are meat eaters part of the brokenness of our original relationship with God? It's kind of a moot point, because these stories were put there to explain the presence of sin and suffering and death. They don't necessarily explain the origin of it. Rather, they are stories that attempt to show how it might have come about, but more, it wasn't intended to be a factual story. It's intended to be a story of truth. And oftentimes we confuse truth and fact. Fact is what exactly happened at exactly this time in exactly this way to these people and so on in that place. Truth is what it means for our lives and for us trying to live lives that are decent, that are goodly, that are godly, in which we love ourselves as we love our neighbor and show our love for God through the love of neighbor. But why did God put a tree in the garden and say, you can have everything else, but not that? Even though when the woman looked upon it, and again, this is Isha, whom we would call Eve, looked upon that and saw that it was so delightful and she could not resist. Well, one explanation is God put it there for the purpose of testing their obedience. And all they had to do is not eat that tree, not touch that tree, that fruit, just not go near it, to ignore it, not to think about it at night when they went to sleep, that there's that one tree there, not to think about it during the day when they were picking fruit of every other tree, and there it is. No, better not. We don't know how many days, months, weeks, years they went without touching it, but it was inevitable. If God put it there and said don't, then it existed for the purpose of testing obedience, and some might say it existed for the purpose of forcing disobedience. And that's really, you can't put a temptation there and say, yeah, just ignore it forever. Forever. Don't put it there. Well, it was there, and sooner or later, one of the two was going to do it. And that's what they call the fall. The fall from grace, this perfect relationship Adam and Eve were naked before each other, fully, emotionally, physically, psychologically. They had no secrets from each other, is what that's intended to say. There was no guile, no deceit between them or between them and God. And then Eve took the fruit of that tree, and we often call it the apple. Well, it probably wasn't an apple. I don't know what fruit they would have had in the Middle East, in where Eden was supposed to be, in what we would call possibly in Iraq today, or in Iran, what's called the Fertile Crescent there between the Tigris and the Euphrates. I don't know what they would have had, but it was some kind of a desirable fruit. And she ate it because the serpent said, "You're not going to die. God just told you that so that you wouldn't, so you'd be afraid of it. God doesn't want you to eat that fruit and have your eyes opened, and all of a sudden you're going to be like God. So why not?" She ate the fruit, and then we don't know what she was thinking, but she thought, I can't be the only one to do this. Here, Adam, take a bite. So the man took a bite, and it said, then the eyes of both were opened. That's verse 7, chapter 3 of Genesis. The eyes of both were opened when he ate it. And they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths, because all of a sudden they were ashamed to be in the presence of each other without any secrets. They knew guile. They knew deceit. They knew how to lie. That's what the fall gave them, the ability to hide from each other, from themselves, to become people who turned in on themselves at the expense of other people. This is one of the fun things then. I love this next story, verse 8. They heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" God, the all-knowing God, says to the man, "Where are you?" As though God doesn't know exactly where Adam and Eve are hiding. Where are you? And he doesn't ask that because he doesn't know. He asks that because he wants them to ask the question, wow, where am I? Where am I now that I've eaten that fruit? Where am I in relation to God? Where am I in relation to my Azar Kenegdo? Where am I in relation to myself? There's a distance, there's a barrier, there's a deceit, there's a lie now at the core of everything I am, everything I do, everything I touch. I have no more pure thoughts, no more pure actions. I will struggle against this new ability until the day I die. And indeed, I will die because I have eaten of this fruit. That's a great question, though. Adam, where are you? Oh. I mean, I wonder if for a moment Adam thought, hey, we've done it. We've hidden from him. Oh, wait, he's God. Of course he knows where we are. Why would he? Oh, that's why he's asking that question. He wants me to ask myself, where am I? Well, Adam then says, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. There's a nice excuse. He said, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? Of course he ate from it. God already knew that. Wow. The man said, the woman that you gave, remember the one, my Azar Kenegdo, that was just right? You gave her to me and she gave me the fruit. So really it's her fault. And actually, God, it's your fault because you gave her to me and she gave me the fruit. I had nothing to do with this. All I did was accept a gift from her. How was I to know? So the first thing the man does is deceive himself into thinking he can now lie to God. He has clothed himself with deceit, with guile. Wow, great story. And we'll look a little more, we'll keep on going through Genesis at these great stories. But this is the fall. And throughout history, we've tried to explain what is sin, what is suffering, what is death. The supposed curse of this that God gives them is that the man and woman no longer have immortality. They can no longer stay in the garden. Now they will have to work for a living. They're no longer on God's dime. They've got to toil, and they've got to then produce descendants. So woman will have pain in giving birth to descendants, and there will always be deceit between the man and the woman. They will never fully be naked and unashamed before each other in every way. There will always be something hidden. No one knows me, not even me, completely. Except God still knows. God still sees. I'm not clothed before God. None of my lies or pretenses or my wall full of certificates and degrees and accomplishments, none of that hides me or disguises me before God. None of that says to me, I am perfect. It all says it's just a way in which I have added to myself in the hopes that I can grow out of sin. But I can't. I am enslaved to sin. That's what the story's meant to tell us. Because of Adam and Eve, Ish and Isha, the first man and first woman, and their disobedience, there is always going to be sin until the grave receives the body where sin dwells. And God is able to cleanse the soul. See you tomorrow.